Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's take up the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by looking at an editorial from page number 6. This editorial evaluates the market opportunities that are available for ISRO. See, just a few days ago, ISRO successfully launched the Amazonia 1 satellite of Brazil, and this marked the beginning of a new chapter in India's space history, especially for NSIL, or the New Space India Limited. See, India's ISRO has a successful track record of launching hundreds of foreign satellites on its launch vehicles. Till date, ISRO has launched around 342 satellites from 34 different countries, and its launch vehicle, the PSLV or the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, has become the workhorse of ISRO to carry out these commercial launches of foreign satellites, because the PSLV has emerged as a reliable and economical option for several foreign partners who have tied up with ISRO to launch their satellites into orbit. Previously, these commercial launches were being collaborated and organized by Antrix Corporation, which is one of the commercial wings of ISRO. For several years now, the Antrix Corporation has successfully functioned as the commercial arm of ISRO, and it has been able to market India's PSLV for the launch of several foreign satellites. But however, the recent launch of Amazonia 1 of Brazil marks a new beginning for NSIL, which is a new commercial arm of ISRO that complements the Antrix Corporation, which was set up recently in 2019. The NSIL has been set up as a public sector enterprise within the Department of Space, and it has been mandated to function as yet another commercial arm of ISRO along with the Antrix Corporation. See, the launch of Brazil's Amazonia 1 satellite was not the first foreign launch for NSIL. Since 2019, NSIL has also organized several foreign launches. But what makes this launch a breakthrough for NSIL is the fact that this is the first dedicated commercial mission for NSIL. See, previously, in November and December 2019, the NSIL had organized a couple of foreign satellite launches on Indian launch vehicles. But in both these missions, Indian satellites were the primary payload, such as RISAT and the Earth Observation Satellite, whereas the foreign satellites were smaller satellites that were launched as secondary payloads on these missions. So essentially, these small foreign satellites, they were piggybacking on the primary Indian satellites, and hence these previous missions of NSIL were not entirely dedicated commercial missions. But the launch of Brazil's Amazonia 1 satellite marks the first dedicated commercial mission for NSIL, because during this mission, the Amazonia 1 satellite was the primary satellite that was being inducted into orbit along with 18 other satellites. So this marks a new breakthrough for NSIL, and the editorial hopes that ISRO and NSIL will be able to build on this success, and it expects the NSIL to create new market opportunities for ISRO which can be commercially exploited for the larger benefit of India's national interests. See, as far as Antrix Corporation and NSIL are concerned, both function as the commercial arms of ISRO. With regard to their mandate and responsibility, there is still some confusion because their responsibilities are yet to be clearly defined by the Department of Space. But however, if you visit the website of NSIL, it becomes clear as to how this new commercial arm of ISRO is different from the Antrix Corporation. See, previously Antrix Corporation was primarily involved in just facilitating the launch of foreign satellites on Indian launch vehicles, whereas NSIL has been given a broader mandate, and its primary focus is on promoting the private industry participation in the development and manufacturing of satellites, especially small satellites, and as well as in the development and manufacturing of launch vehicles, with the technology being outsourced from ISRO. ISRO has stated that it is ready to outsource its technology related to satellite manufacturing and as well as related to the development and manufacturing of launch vehicles such as PSLV. Because ISRO has already fine-tuned these technologies and it wants to outsource the development and manufacturing to the private sector so that the ISRO can free up its resources to focus on other ambitious space missions, especially space exploration and research and development. So this is where the NSIL can play a key role as the commercial arm of ISRO and help in commercializing these products that have been developed by ISRO. It can promote industry participation from the private sector and take over the manufacturing of satellites, especially smaller satellites, and as well as the development and manufacturing of reliable and established launch vehicles such as the PSLV. Then upon this, NSIL has also been given the mandate to commercialize the various space products and space applications that is going to be developed by ISRO. It is supposed to market the various space products and space-based services that will be offered by ISRO through its platforms. And it is required to engage with both the global and domestic players in order to commercialize these products and applications developed by ISRO. So essentially, NSIL is set to facilitate not just the launch of foreign satellites on Indian launch vehicles, but it has also been given the mandate to revolutionize the space industry in India by enhancing private sector participation and to commercialize ISRO's products and services by marketing them globally and as well as within India. Then apart from setting up NSIL, India has taken up several other steps to step up the participation of the private sector in the space industry. For example, recently the government of India has set up IN-SPACE, which stands for Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. This institution is all set to function as a regulatory agency that will regulate the entry of private players into the space industry. Along with this, there is also a proposal from the Department of Space to establish an independent tribunal that can adjudicate any disputes between the private sector and the space industry that would be led by public entities such as ISRO, NSIL and Antrix Corporation. There is also one more reason why the government established NSIL despite having the Antrix Corporation, and this was because of the scandal involving Dewas Multimedia and Antrix Corporation. Dewas Multimedia is a space-based startup that had entered into a commercial deal with Antrix Corporation for launching satellites and for offering multimedia services. But a few years ago, a scandal was alleged involving this contract between Dewas Multimedia and Antrix Corporation, and this scandal and these allegations ended up hurting the image of ISRO. So to avoid such scandals in the future and to fully exploit the market opportunities offered by space-based application, the Government of India decided to establish a new commercial arm of ISRO known as NSIL, which would complement the existing functions and responsibilities of Antrix Corporation. So the editorial hopes that the NSIL is going to be able to build upon its mandate and not just limit itself to facilitating commercial launches of foreign satellites, but it hopes that the NSIL will be able to diversify into new space-related industries because space technology and space-based assets, they provide the opportunity for numerous space-based applications. And through these applications, a variety of space-based products and space-based services can be nurtured through a startup ecosystem. And this is where the NSIL has to play a key role. And it should enable the space-based startup ecosystem in the country. And parallelly, it should look out for new business opportunities that could be tapped by ISRO. Through such active collaboration with the private industry and the startups, the NSIL should enable ISRO to reach out to rural areas of the country and provide space-based services to the unreached and the underserved regions of the country so that both ISRO and the private space industry can start recruiting the young talent, thereby creating a self-sustaining space industry in the country, along with enabling the creation of thousands of jobs. So the editorial expresses the hope that NSIL should act not just as the ambassador of India in the space arena, and it should not limit itself to selling commercial launches for foreign satellites on Indian launch vehicles, but it should proactively go on to disrupt the space domain and the space industry in the country by nurturing the startup ecosystem and by encouraging the participation of the private industry in the space domain. Now let's take up a column from page number 6 that evaluates the gaps in India's cybersecurity architecture. See, recently there was a sensational article in the New York Times which claimed that India's power grids had been brought down last year, especially in the city of Mumbai, through a cyber attack that was sponsored by a Chinese state agency. In response to these reports, the Maharashtra government acknowledged that the Maharashtra Cyber Cell had pointed out that last year's grid failure in Mumbai could have occurred because of a cyber attack. Accordingly, Maharashtra's Home Minister has also promised to table the details relating to this incident in front of the Assembly. But however, the Union Power Ministry has denied that the power outage in Mumbai was a result of a Chinese-sponsored cyber attack, but it did acknowledge that several power grids in India have been brought under cyber attacks. Any such cyber attack on the country's power infrastructure could be labeled as an attack on the country's critical information infrastructure. Because critical infrastructure sectors such as power, banking, finance, defense, space and atomic sectors, and even sectors such as road and rail transportation, they all fall under the country's critical infrastructure. These critical infrastructure sectors, they function as the backbone of the economy, and the computer systems and the networks that control the operations of this critical infrastructure is referred to as critical information infrastructure. So any cyber attack on the critical information infrastructure of the country can have a crippling effect on the economy, and it can not only threaten the country's economic security, but it can even threaten the country's national security. While the government of India has denied the role of any state agency in carrying out cyber attacks that were responsible for the failure of power grid in Mumbai, the acknowledgement by the state government and its promise of tabling a report in the state assembly makes it the first time that a cybersecurity related incident is being discussed so openly by senior government officials. Despite India's denial of any role of Chinese state agencies in carrying out these cyber attacks, there is enough evidence available to indicate that in the past, Chinese state agencies have indeed mounted such cyber attacks against India's critical infrastructure. Take for example, Operation GhostNet, which was detected back in 2009, which was essentially a Chinese state-sponsored cyber espionage operation primarily targeted against the Indian government in order to gain information, that to classified information related to the Tibetan government in exile, which operates out of Dharamshala in Himachal Pradesh. It was reported by cybersecurity firms that under Operation GhostNet, several sensitive computers of the Indian government, including computers of Indian embassies, were targeted. And this investigation led the investigators to a secretive covert organization known as the Shadow Network, which is reportedly sponsored by the Chinese state agencies. Further investigation revealed that the Shadow Network had indeed mounted several such cyber attacks against India, and over the years, it had successfully managed to carry out cyber espionage operations against Indian networks. Through these operations, Chinese state agencies have reportedly targeted India's military establishment, Indian media, and as well as sensitive ministries and departments of the government, such as the National Security Council, the Ministry of External Affairs, etc. Then we have cyber warfare incidents, such as the Stuxnet worm, which was reportedly developed by the United States and Israel to target Iran's nuclear weapons program. The Stuxnet worm had ended up affecting many Indian computers as well. Then more recently, we had another cybersecurity incident which has been labeled as the Suckfly incident. This particular cyber attack was also reportedly state-sponsored, and it targeted not just the Indian government but also several private entities and as well as the National Stock Exchange. Then we had one more incident which has been labeled as D-Track, which reportedly was again state-sponsored, and initially this attack targeted Indian banks, and later it also breached the cybersecurity of the Kundankulam nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu. So all these cyber attacks which have taken place in the recent past, they have been well documented, and there is enough evidence to show that these attacks were sponsored by state agencies either belonging to China, United States or other countries, and they were designed to engage in cyber espionage and cyber warfare operations. So considering the cyber capabilities of few countries such as China, US, Russia, Israel and the others, it becomes very essential for the Indian government to inform the parliament and the larger public about the true nature of these incidents, because such proactive disclosure will lead to meaningful public discussions which will in turn help the country in drafting a robust response against these cyber attacks. then we also need to consider the possibility that in many cases, the origin of the cyber attacks can be very well hidden, and it's even possible for one country to falsely point fingers at another country. When several classified documents were leaked by WikiLeaks, it showed that the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States had acquired the capability to conduct such false flag operations in the cyber domain, through which the US could carry out cyber attacks against a particular country and falsely point fingers at another country. And in intelligence jargon, we refer to this as false flag operations or false flag attacks. Now, considering that such false flag operations are possible in the cyber domain, it becomes very difficult to attribute the attacks to a particular state agency. See, we all know that in the cyber domain, the concept of geographical jurisdiction doesn't apply. Plus, while carrying out cyber attacks, the attackers can use proxy servers to successfully hide their identity and location, and this makes it very difficult to attribute the attacks to a particular source. So when these possibilities exist, and when there are countries that have acquired enormous capabilities in cyber espionage and cyber warfare, it becomes very essential for a country like India, which has already been the victim of a few cyber attacks, to gear up its cybersecurity architecture and plug the existing gaps. See, over the last 2 decades, India has made a lot of progress in putting in place an efficient cybersecurity architecture. At the policy making level, within the Prime Minister's office, several portfolios have been created related to cybersecurity, and these officials are tasked with advising the PMO on policy making with regard to cybersecurity. Then within the National Security Council, which is headed by the National Security Advisor, the NSA through the National Security Council is expected to play a key role in drafting India's cybersecurity policy. Then the National Information Board, which is also headed by the NSA, is meant to function as an apex level body for cross-ministry coordination on cybersecurity policy making. So at the apex level, such institutional mechanisms have been created to aid India's policy making with regard to cybersecurity. Then at the executive level, several institutions have been created to defend the Indian cyberspace and detect the cyber attacks so that we can attribute the attacks and respond effectively against these attacks. Through the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013, India has established the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, and it functions under the NTRO, or the National Technical Research Organization. The NTRO was set up as India's premier technical intelligence wing under Research and Analysis Wing, which is India's foreign intelligence agency. But recently, the NTRO has been moved from RAW, and it has been placed directly under the command of the National Security Advisor. So under the NTRO, the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center has come up to defend the country's critical information infrastructure against any possible cyber attacks that are looking to disrupt the functioning and the operations of the country's critical infrastructure. Then under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, CERT-IN, or Computer Emergency Response Team, India, has been set up as the nodal agency to defend the Indian cyberspace in the non-critical areas. Then recently, in a major defense reform, the Defense Cyber Agency was set up as a tri-service agency to develop India's cyber warfare capabilities, including the development of defensive and as well as offensive cyber weapons. The Defense Cyber Agency is also in the process of drafting India's cyber warfare doctrine. Then through the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013, the National Cyber Coordination Center has been set up, and it functions under CERT-IN to promote coordination between different stakeholders who are involved in cybersecurity. Then recently in 2015, a special advisor has been appointed to the Prime Minister who functions as the National Cybersecurity Coordinator and advises the PM on strategic cybersecurity related issues. Then more recently, through the National Security Council, the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013 is being updated, and most likely the government is going to come out with the National Cybersecurity Strategy very soon. This is going to be an updated version of the 2013 policy. So this roughly defines India's cybersecurity architecture at the policy making level and as well as at the executive level. But however, when you evaluate this existing architecture, it becomes very clear that the existence of multiple institutions and multiple policy making bodies creates problems of coordination, and it also results in the overlap of responsibilities and resources. This could also result in wasteful expenditure, and the lack of institutional boundaries would only create more confusion between the multiplicity of these institutions. This is where the writers point out that there is an urgent need for India to come out with a clear-cut doctrine, that is a cybersecurity doctrine, that seeks to promote institutional coherence and addresses the existing confusion in our cybersecurity architecture. Now, the problem is that the cybersecurity policy of 2013 is outdated, and the creation of multiple institutions at the executive level has added to the confusion and created problems of coordination. Then at the apex level, multiple institutions are responsible for policy making, which also results in an overlap of responsibilities, and eventually this results in wasteful expenditure at the executive level. Hence, the writers are advocating doctrinal clarity from India's part so that institutional coherence can be built, which can help in plugging the gaps in India's cybersecurity architecture and help in establishing a robust cybersecurity posture for the country. For example, in the nuclear domain, India has come out with such a nuclear doctrine which provides for clarity and transparency, and through this nuclear doctrine, India has clearly spelt out its no first use policy. Through the nuclear doctrine, India has also spelt out its command and control structure, and it has clearly defined as to how India's nuclear weapons will be operationalized through the Nuclear Command Authority headed by the civilian leadership, that is by the Prime Minister, and how the decisions of the Nuclear Command Authority shall be put into action by the Strategic Forces Command. So this clear-cut, transparent doctrine of India has made India a responsible nuclear power, and at the same time, it has helped in establishing India's second strike capabilities, thereby establishing nuclear deterrence against hostile countries. So the writers say that, similar to a nuclear doctrine, India should also come out with a cyber doctrine that specifically deals with cyber espionage and especially cyber warfare. Along with this doctrine at the national level, India will also have to work with the global institutions, such as the United Nations, to come out with an international law or a global framework that can help in defining the red lines for a cyber attack. For example, through such a cyber doctrine and through established international law, cyber attacks, especially state-sponsored cyber attacks that can cost human lives, that can disrupt healthcare systems and power systems, water supply, and those attacks that can threaten the country's financial system and transportation networks can be prohibited and declared as illegal. Such a clear-cut definition in our cyber doctrine and through international law will help in defining the red lines beyond which India will be in a legitimate position to carry out a counter-attack, not only to defend the country against these attacks, but also to retaliate and punish the perpetrators. Such a doctrine will help in establishing credible deterrence and create a credible cybersecurity posture, and hence there is a need to come out with a clear-cut strategy that is transparent, which will help guide the cybersecurity institutions of the country to detect cyber attacks against Indian cyberspace and to attribute these attacks to pinpoint the source and to effectively respond against these attacks. Such a response should not only involve defensive operations to defend the cyberspace and the critical infrastructure of the country, but it should also spell out the offensive warfare plans of India, which clearly establishes its second strike capabilities. When such a public posture is taken through a cybersecurity doctrine, it will not only help in instilling confidence amongst the citizens and as well as build trust with close friends and partners, but more importantly, it will also send out the signal and the intent to the adversary states and the hostile states which might sponsor such cyber espionage and cyber warfare operations against India. A clear-cut doctrine with institutional coherence will also help in securing the overall cyber ecosystem in the country. Now let's take up an article from page number 10. The DRDO has successfully tested its SFDR technology, which stands for Solid Fuel Ducted Ramjet technology, which is used on long-range air-to-air missiles, during a flight demonstration that was carried out at the Integrated Test Range in Chandipur off the coast of Odisha. This SFDR technology is a type of Ramjet technology which is possessed only by a few countries, and it helps in the indigenous development of long-range air-to-air missiles. So this provides us an opportunity to talk a little more about Ramjet technology, which can be important for both prelims and mains. See, Ramjet technology is a strategic technology that is sought out by countries around the world. It is a type of air-breathing technology which is used in combustion engines that are used to power aircrafts, rockets, and missiles. If this air-breathing technology is inducted into rocket engines, it can bring about a significant shift in the very design of the launch vehicle. Basically, under air-breathing technologies, there are three main concepts. We have ramjet, scramjet, and dual-mode ramjet. Defense and space agencies around the world are working to develop these technologies, and India, especially ISRO and DRDO, they have already started pioneering these technologies. See, a ramjet depicted in this image over here is basically a air-breathing jet engine that makes use of the vehicle's forward motion to compress the incoming air into the engine, that is into the combustion chamber over here, without the help of a rotating compressor. So this compression of incoming air at high speeds helps in providing the oxidizer with the right temperature, which can help in igniting the fuel in the combustion chamber, and as a result, such a vehicle need not carry any separate oxidizer on board. The incoming air into the engine is compressed without the help of a rotating compressor, and this itself acts as an oxidizer. So such a combustion, which takes place in an air-breathing engine, provides for tremendous thrust, especially during the last stages of the flight, and it can significantly alter the very design of the launch vehicle because it need not carry any oxidizer on board. But however, ramjet technology cannot operate when the airspeed is zero. It means that a ramjet-powered vehicle requires an assisted takeoff through a rocket in order to accelerate it to a speed where it can begin producing thrust through ramjet air-breathing technology. So as a result, ramjets work efficiently only at supersonic speeds, especially around speeds of Mach 3, that is around 3 times the speed of sound. So from Mach 3 to Mach 6, ramjet engines are very efficient and they produce tremendous thrust. But beyond Mach 6, the efficiency of the ramjet engine starts dropping because at these hypersonic speeds, the temperature of the incoming air is already high, and hence it won't help in igniting the fuel which is being injected into the combustion chamber. At such hypersonic speeds, the temperature of the incoming air which is getting compressed would be the same as that of the temperature in the combustion chamber, and it doesn't help in the process of combustion. As a result, the efficiency of the ramjet engine starts dropping at hypersonic speeds. In order to overcome this, scramjet engines were developed, which is basically an improvement over the ramjet engine. These scramjet engines can operate efficiently even at hypersonic speeds, and hence they are known as supersonic combustion ramjet or scramjet. The third type is the dual mode ramjet, which is a type of a jet engine where a ramjet, that is a regular ramjet engine itself, transforms into a scramjet at hypersonic speeds. So such a dual mode ramjet engine can efficiently operate at both subsonic, supersonic, and hypersonic speeds. In the SFDR technology that has been demonstrated by DRDO, it has successfully developed the ramjet technology that can make use of solid fuel, which will be very helpful in developing indigenous long-range air-to-air missiles. See, currently the Rafale fighter jets that India has procured from France, it uses a long-range air-to-air missile known as the Meteor, developed by the MBDA. Currently, the Indian Air Force is dependent on imported long-range air-to-air missiles because the indigenous air-to-air missile, that is Astra, has a very limited range. So to extend the range of the Astra air-to-air missile, DRDO is working on its Mark II version, which makes use of SFDR technology, which is based on ramjet technology. When SFDR propulsion system is used in the Astra air-to-air missile, it provides for tremendous thrust in the final stage, thereby significantly enhancing the performance of the missile during the terminal phase when the missile makes contact with the target. This is one of the biggest advantages of ramjet-based propulsion, because in the final stages of engagement, the missile can generate more thrust and more energy, which gives it more flexibility to maneuver during the last phase of the engagement. So as a result, any air-to-air missile equipped with Ramjet propulsion will be capable of creating one of the largest no-escape zones for the target, and this will provide for a very high degree of success while intercepting the target. Now finally, let's take up a couple of mains practice questions. The first question: ISRO must take advantage of the market opportunities from space applications to disrupt the space arena and to serve the larger interests of the nation. Discuss. The second question: despite all the measures taken by India, there are still several gaps in its cybersecurity. Doctrinal clarity and institutional coherence are essential for a robust cybersecurity posture. Evaluate. Kindly write an answer to these questions and post your answers in the comment section below. This concludes our discussion for the day. Thanks for watching.